So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Labour's first 100 days in charge and kind of how badly it's kind of going, I guess.
I think they're worried and dismayed, and they expect more from him in terms of leadership and what the Prime Minister does. So at the party conference, it wasn't evident that he was giving the kind of energetic, galvanising, charismatic leadership that you would expect. But I think he's done some good things. I mean, the riots would be an example where he's really come across as prime ministerial. Look, the question is, can he sort it out now? Has he got the right team? If he does, Gordon Brown stumbled early on. There was the...
I mean, Gordon Brown had to deal with the financial crash, I think, and a lot of other issues. So I'm not going to, it's a bit unfair to make that comparison.
Election that was going to be called early and then was called off. He got back on track. He brought in the right people. I think the question is, has he now learned his lessons? Has he got the right team? And if he does, we'll forget about this period. And
probably correct, but I think, with bringing in Morgan McSweeney, like, that guy seems like a weirdo, to be honest. With this first 100 day stuff, this is kind of like, it's an Americanism, and in some ways, this is something that Alistair Coke mentioned. The first 100 days thing is kind of nonsense, but Labour kept talking about what they're going to achieve in their first 100 days, so you kind of feed into the nonsense at that point. In some ways he's right. For a start, how can anyone measure up to the leaders of mythic yardsticks that were used for, like, FDR? He pushed through a number of laws in his first 100 days in office as he sought to pull America out from the clutches of the Great Depression and confront a national crisis. Parliament has been on recess as well, which is something we have to factor in, and I think the British legislature is slower than the American ones. You can understand why vainglorious Donald Trump dismissed the first 100 days notion as a ridiculous standard. Putting FDR aside, there's no reason why the first 100 days are a useful yardstick. It sets the tone of a premiership and tells us something about a leader's momentum. I don't think it really does, to be fair. I think it is a bit silly of a metric to use, but like I said, Labour fell into it, so they deserve to get called out when they haven't achieved much in their first 100 days.
Look, it's not been a glorious month for Keir Starmer, but now the government wants us to focus on the big stuff they're doing. So it's workers' rights today. It's a big investment summit next week, and then
this is what they should have been doing from the start, really. These things, just constantly just talking about the workers' rights bill coming out, focusing on these stories. Instead, they had to focus on bribes and Sue Gray and other stuff, because they didn't put out a ton of kind of new information or anything to get kind of the media or the public excited about.
And your day job, the 30th of October, is, of course, the big event. That is the budget. And the government will be hoping basically to do what Gordon Brown used to do very successfully when he was Chancellor. You plant a stake in the ground, you need a budget to do that, and then you aim to dominate the entire narrative in the run-up to that, and then in the aftermath after that. And then you frame the entire narrative. In politics, politicians are desperate to focus on substance. We journalists like to focus on process, donations. In the case of Keir Starmer, this government hopes now the focus will turn to substance.
I think that's one of the reasons why they're talking about going big in this budget, despite the flaws within it. The other thing is, I think they realise they've turned off a lot of investors by constantly talking about doom and gloom, things like that. So I think they've realised where they've kind of misplayed, and I think the budget will be important.
I guess the decisive moment for them now is the budget at the end of this month. Does that put more money into the NHS? Does it put more money into skills training? Because if it doesn't, we're not going to be building more housing. We're not going to be, getting the highest sustained growth in the G7. In fact, we're not if we don't put more money into health and social care, because that is such a drain on society at the moment, those huge backlogs. Is there investment on a scale to get the highest sustained growth that they promised? That's the questions that we're going to have to ask. Are they going to scrap the two-child limit and really tackle child poverty in a way like Gordon Brown did very early on in the Blair Brown years? Those are the things. Are they going to admit they made a mistake on winter fuel allowance and do a U-turn on it? It's a silly amount of money. They've come in saying there's a 22 billion black hole, and you can, question some of the funding of that, but there is quite a big overspend that the Tories hadn't accounted for, however you calculate it. The winter fuel cuts save about 1.3 billion of that, and then a lot of that's offset by the higher uptake of pension credit. So it's a bit of a silly thing. It's a lot of pain for not much financial gain. So
I think they went in there trying to get all of these things done, early on, and so in a year or two they say, look, we can bring back the winter fuel allowance, we can bring back these other benefits because we've kind of fixed and stabilized the economy. I think that was their plan, but I think they realized, like, one thing investors love is optimism. They hate pessimism. Why would you invest in a country that's going to push through a painful budget, that's going to look at things like cuts? Why would you invest in such a place? You want to look at a place that's on the up, not right now on the downward trend.
So hopefully they do a U-turn on that, put their hands up, and people, I think, appreciate if politicians say, look, we got that wrong, we've listened, we're putting it right. Those will be the things that people will really judge on it. It's the tangible pound in my pocket. Can I get a GP appointment? Am I having to wait for 7 months for an operation in the NHS or 6 hours in A&E? Can my kids get housing? Has my mum or dad got the social care they need on tap?
What Labour need to do is go back to the basics with this stuff and really focus on just substantive changes. Like, some of the stuff when it comes to housing planning and things like that is important. I think people are waiting for the tangible aspects of it. People are waiting to see if these houses can actually be built, given that we have a massive skill shortage in this country. But that's what Labour should have done from the start, but instead they've been mired kind of in just nonsense scandals and infighting and a really, really bitter in-group in and around Starmer. That's one of the major problems that they faced. And, you've got here Starmer to announce a series of announcements in the upcoming months focused on the economy, NHS, migration, and crime to show he's delivering for voters. McSweeney wants to put the government on a permanent campaign footing, but that's the thing, though. You can't constantly campaign. You have to actually deliver for people. I don't know if this I'm not understanding the wording here or whatever. The strategists tell a more positive and retail-friendly story in an effort to show the government has learned lessons from the first 100 days. The operation will be more political and focus relentlessly on what data and polling shows swing voters want, which means, like, we're probably going to not see the end of things like the two-child cap, because I wouldn't be surprised if swing voters actually want to keep that in place. Starmer told the new team to crack on. McSweeney brought into Labour HQ to emphasise campaign focus. Told Spads don't be taken in by pomp and ceremony. Government said purpose is to do what's best for those who elected them and win in 2019. It's not looking. I'm not sure if I'm feeling this kind of positivity, to be honest with you. But yeah, we wait and see. We wait and see on the budget. That's the thing. And Labour have left a void, and essentially filled some of that void with, like I said, nonsense stories and misplays that should never have happened. Never ever should have happened. But that's what happens. You get in government. You get greedy. People offer you money. People offer you opportunities, tickets, and you take them. And the public don't like that. The public don't have time for that kind of stuff. We might as well play this LBC clip here.
I am so concerned that this man, Morgan McSweeney, who they keep saying won them the election, and I remember what was done during the election, how some really good people were deselected or not selected. And I think his own good wife got a safe seat. And it was so ruthless and so cruel, including how Diane Abbott was treated, that he reminds me of Dominic Cummings. I
think that's who he bases himself on, the data guy.
He's being described. I've never met him. He knows how to do he understands. He doesn't give a toss for civil servants. He tossed one aside, ex-civil servant one aside, didn't he? There was a lot of plotting behind the scenes. I don't know Sue Gray. The other question is the Lord Alley thing wasn't just them being naive and taking gifts. There was a huge part he was playing, and the thing I don't understand is they say it was Sue Gray who brought them in, and everywhere I go and every program I've talked to, people are furious about the freebies. Absolutely. One rule for them, one rule for others.
Is that in part because of the reporting that the Tories, when they were in office, Rishi Sunak was billing us £40 million for a helicopter, that barely got a mention in the papers, whereas Keir Starmer and a pair of spectacles is front page news for weeks.
No, that is true. I think one of the issues is that, again, it's expected from the Tories. It's something Campbell talked about, how Labour have to be a lot better than Tories and held to a higher standard. The other thing is there was so much going on, as well. There were so many more stories to focus on. And again, you can go for the Boris Johnson strategy on scandals, which is you just keep spamming out scandal after scandal and people eventually get bored of them and the media don't know where to focus. Or you have as many minimal scandals as possible and you put out actual substantive stuff and you force the media to talk about that stuff instead of talking about things that shouldn't be really, that the public probably don't really care about that much.
Listen, like I said, we didn't vote for a little less dodgy.
Yeah, no, it's just.
We voted for clean politics. Why do you need, if you're on, you're earning between you two, husband and wife, about two to £300 a year. I have 17 pairs of glasses.
I think she meant two to £300,000 a year there.
Pay for them all myself.
Likewise.
And I don't earn anything like they earn.
Likewise.
That's the point, though, isn't it? Like, they didn't need this stuff. They just took it because they could, because it was offered to them. And in the end, we still don't know what kind of Lord Ali wanted. And I wonder if we'll ever find out, if there'll ever be some sort of smoking gun there. But I think she's right there. We didn't vote for less dodgy. We voted for cleaner politics. Starmer kept talking about change. What change do we have? Because we still have the politics of self-service. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.